I applied chipping medium to the muffler in this area here where the big muffler can is. I'm going to spray Dunkelgelb base, same color I have on the Panzer III. I'm going to spray that on the muffler, and then I'm going to take and chip a bunch of the paint off. You can see where I'm at with the muffler. I got the chipping done with the paint, the Dunkelgelb paint. And now I'm going to add a few other tones of rust. Well, I took some really thin orange rust. I thinned it with Vallejo thinner medium. Then I took some Vallejo dark rust, thinned it with thinner medium, got it very thin. You can see here. And then I dabbed it on the muffler. And the top is a little more orange than the bottom. The bottom is darker. I've got a spot here, probably need to darken up a little bit. And I just blotted the colors on, and I blotted them on wet, and allowed them to mix together. And so I'm going to let that dry. And once it's dry, I'll apply this wash to it. So we'll see what that looks like in a little bit here. I'm going to add the rust wash. The previous two colors haven't completely dried. Alright, well, I'll let that dry. See how it looks. Well, I have the muffler finished. And I did end up using some pigment. Because I couldn't get the gloss off. Even using a flat clear, it still had some gloss to it. And I can't have gloss on my rusty muffler. Well, it's time for the pin wash. It's kind of a lengthy step. It takes quite a while to do. And in a model like this that has so many fine details, it might take me a couple nights. I have a brand new 2-0 brush with a nice, beautiful new point on it. MIG oil brushers. I use this as my oil paint. And I have some odorless terpenoid that I'll use to thin the oil paint, and I'll also use it to clean my brush. Alright, that's plenty for now. one of my mixing sticks. These things are so handy. All right. Well, this is enough for one night. I have 5 hours in the pin wash, and essentially I have most of the top done. And there may be a couple spots, and I see some spots I already missed. So, and I need to clean that up. So I guess I'll need to get to that. But, you know, it's begun. And this is, in my opinion, the most crucial step in transforming your model into something detailed and realistic. I got most of the hull last night. I didn't get it all. You can get a little ways out in front before you have to come back and clean it up. All right. Just get the brush clean. Remove the excess. All right, the hull is done. So I'll show it to you quick. So I think most of this work on the undercarriage will probably be lost when I apply all the dirt to it, dirt and mud. But the pin wash, without a doubt, is my favorite detailing step. It just does so much to bring the model to life. And again, all this work is probably going to be covered up, but you never know. Some of it might show. Well, I have the pin wash on the turret. I'm thinking maybe I should paint these areas brown for leather. Maybe they're pads. You know, I don't know that much about these tanks and stuff, as odd as that may seem, because most modelers are very familiar with the equipment, and I'm just really not, but I think that's what that is, so I should probably paint those. But I'm going to show you what I have, and it's really a very nice turret. The model itself is, for a budget model, it's really a very nice model. And, you know, I think I have, I don't know how many hours I have in it, but it's certainly well worth the $35 street price for this kit. And it's funny, you know, I'm not really a Panzer III fan. I mostly like the late war stuff because, well, they got big guns and they're bigger tanks. But this has been just a really enjoyable model to build. So I have to applaud Takom for this kit. It's just a terrific kit. The next step in the Panzer III will be to work on the undercarriage. And what I'm going to do is apply some dirt and dust to the bottom of the undercarriage. I'm going to start with heavy earth and use that for a base layer. And then I'm going to use the dry earth and spatter that over the top of it. So it looks like, you know, there's some moisture in the earth, but on the surface it's drying. See if I can pull that off. I haven't used this heavy earth enough to be real familiar with it. So I'm not going to get it on too heavy initially. And you see I've taped off the axles. And what I would like is if this stuff would dry flat. But I'm worried that since it's called heavy mud, that it's going to be glossy. So what I would like to do is use it as, you know, when you moist earth, whereas if the tank treads moved over an area and once it churns up the dry upper layer of ground, the soil below is moist but not wet, and it's darker in color. So initially I'm not going to get this on too heavy because I want to see how it dries. All right, well, I'm taking a little bit of the big heavy earth. I'm going to see if I can spatter a little bit of it. All right, I've thinned the heavy mud and I've spattered it onto the lower chassis. And now what I'm going to do is spatter on some dry earth and see if that gets me the effect I'm looking for. All right, well, the dry earth and the heavy earth speckling, yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. So what I need to do is I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to get some lacquer thinner on it, and I'm going to see if I can do something with this. But yeah, this is not what I want, and I'm going to try to see what I can do to fix it. All right, well, I'm going to call that good. I'm going to call the sides done. I can't speckle the front and back until later in the process. All right, so we're going to streak this a little bit and work on it, try to make it look natural. In the end, we're going to do some dry earth speckling, but we won't be doing that until right at the end. So I'm going to put a little dry earth on here. And this heavy earth it takes a really long time to dry, so it's still wet. And I don't want to get the streaks up too high, so we're going to continue to streak it. Just want to get it, so I'm thinning it out, getting it moved around just a little bit. Now the streaks underneath this bar will be hidden by the spare tracks. I want to clean up the bar, make sure we don't have any streaks on that. We'll speckle it later. All right, so we'll let that dry. We really won't know what we have until it dries. And I don't want to handle this too much because that heavy earth, it takes forever to dry. So hope I can handle this without breaking it. And you can see this side looks like. Now this is side we did the speckling and it didn't work out. So don't panic if you try something and it doesn't work out. Just take a step back and see what you can do with it. In this case, I just took some turpenoid or enamel thinner, if you have that, and just start working the paint. Working the dry earth, wet earth, streaking it up and down until it looks good to you. Now, to me, I think when this finally dries, it's going to look just fine. And this side, I tried to duplicate the effect, and it's not exactly the same, but I think it's going to look just fine. It's very similar. And then now we're working on the front. And we can do a little bit of streaking here. All right, I think that's going to be okay. Well, the thinner is dried for that real light dry earth mixture that I speckled on. And you can see some of the speckling in here. Throughout here, it's very light. And I'm not sure if I like it or not. And I'm trying to add to that dry mud look, but I'm going to keep it and proceed on. And it's something that I may or may not use in future builds. But I feel like I need to try new things, and if it works out, well, I put it in my modeling toolbox. If it doesn't work, well, then I tried it and I know it doesn't work. But I'll see how I feel about it. When I get around to putting the tracks on the model. And worst case, well, it's not awful, and it's something I tried. So I'll move on to the next step. Well, the next step is the road wheels. And I'll take some dry earth. Cover them up. And give me a wipe off my brush. Got a little thinner on there. I'll take it off. All right, that's it. That's all there is to that. Well, I got the road wheels with dirt on them, and I used dry earth, put that on slightly thinned, and then I took a brush dipped in thinner, enamel thinner, and wiped the dry earth off the tire. It still leaves a film, which I want, but it leaves a pretty nice look where it's dusty, but it doesn't hide the details of the wheel. And I also did the back of the wheels, because obviously those would get dirty. Although we're not going to see it. You might see the 4 corner wheels, so I want to make sure I have those done. Well, I have the pin wash applied to the wheels. And you can see here I have a grease stain. And, I'd like to have a couple with stains like that just to give it some character, but not too many. And here's a second one I did like that. And that'll be all, just 2. And this one I did a little more highlighting on the center cap. I have the drive sprockets done. And I have the dry earth applied. And I touched up around the edge to give it a little bit of definition. And I have the worn steel teeth on the sprockets. And with some definition on the inside as well, since that's going to be seen. And on the inside of the back as well. Some definition on the outside edge, because that will be seen. And the idlers. I have dry earth inside all the spokes. I have dry earth in the back. The pin wash on the bolt heads here is still visible. When I applied the dry earth, I made sure not to get too much on the face here, because I want a little bit of definition there. And the edges have some dry earth film, but they're fairly clear. And of course, the worn steel where the track rides. I painted that in MIG matte aluminum. So I'm going to get started on the tracks. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's a little bit tedious. There's a whole bunch to paint. Got to do the inside, outside, top, bottom, and try not to break my tracks. Get started. Gonna need quite a bit of this. And you see, it's very thick. It's like chocolate syrup. Mix in some thinner. And I got this old worn out #1 brush, but it's great for things like this. And it's still very thick. That's still thick. This stuff is crazy thick. It's almost unusable out of the bottle. There we go. Probably going to end up using most of that. And, you know, the process, as far as this brown coat goes, is the dark rust, is just paint it on. And on the home stretch here with the tracks for the dark rust color. And I'm just finishing up on this one. And I'll have the tracks painted inside and out. And one of the benefits of the black primer, you know, not only does it give you a good adhesion for your paint, but it, you know, also if I don't get complete coverage, then I have the black to save me. I won't have a bunch of gray plastic showing through. Or if I used a white primer. Well, I'm ready for the next step. I'm going to apply the orange rust. And I'm going to use my old beat up #1 brush. I'm just going to kind of dab it on. I like to try to get some down in between the cleats. So this is going to, when it dries, the dark rust is going to show through in a lot of places. So I try to get a random coating. Thicker in some areas, thinner in other areas. Here's the tracks after the orange rust. And it's been drying for a little bit. It's not completely dry, but it's just about there. And you can see in conjunction with the dark rust, it looks pretty good. Now it might be over the top right now, but you know, most of this is going to be covered up and only a little bit of it's going to peek through here and there. Well, I have the tracks rusted, and what we used was dark rust as our base over the top of primer. Then we used some orange rust. And then finally, we used the wash. And our tracks look like they've been sitting at the bottom of a lake for 50 years. But most of this won't be seen. A little bit of it will peek through here and there. All right, the next step in our track evolution is to polish up the contact areas. I got to be careful with some of the ends where the links are glued together. It's a little bit fragile. But I have this graphite pencil, and I also have just a regular old #2 pencil. Take a little bit of care here that I don't break it. All right. Now that that's done, I can take this rubber tip, I guess it's a brush, I don't know what else I would call it, and rub that on the graphite. Kind of spread it around. All right, now that the contact pattern is put down on the tracks, next thing will be to add the dry earth. We're kind of getting close to the home stretch. Well, the texture is dried on the tracks. And you can see on this track I've already brushed it off and I cleaned up the cleats, so those are ready to paint. I just picked up this brush at a craft store, and it's great for this. And you just brush it on your tracks to knock that texture off. You can see the cleats are now clean, or we can paint them. All right, time to get the tracks on. So I get the drive sprocket and the idler in position. The idler might be a little more tricky. There we go. All right, those are all in place. I did use a little bit of super glue to glue the tracks to several of the road wheels and all of the return rollers. I'm over halfway done with the weathering. I still have oils to apply. You fade on the top and then a gradient fade in other areas. I still have streaking to do. I still have some spattering to do with the mud texture. And I still have the tools to finish. So there's quite a bit of work yet to do. I had to cut this video off at this point because it's already really long. I'm struggling trying to generate some views for my channel, and if I get this video 2 hours long, no one's going to watch it. Once I have the weathering finished with the model, I still have 3 figures to paint, and I have the display base to build, so there's still a lot of work yet to do in this project. But I thank you for watching, and I hope you will join me as we continue on this journey.